Welcome and Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
So I thank you. So I think that's what's cool is the interpretations that come out of these numbers and these, things that appear on the surface to be somewhat dry actually turn out to be of interest, to have some interesting side issues that come up as a result of these. And hopefully we'll get into them this morning. And let's go ahead with the screen share. And we were here, down here. So we had just read in this verse, we are reading about how Moses and Aaron and their families were residing at the entrance of the tabernacle, entrance of that tabernacle courtyard. And that's what we had read. And also the fact that any non-Levite was not allowed to engage in anything that any of the duties and responsibilities of the Levites. And we'll get some more background about how this all developed, because you should know that this is Plan B. The whole idea of the Levitical tribe, the tribe of Levi, in fact, performing these unique duties amongst the Israelites, as opposed to any other tribe, was not the way it was supposed to be to begin with. Just to let you know now, or to remind you, that was supposed to be the responsibilities of the firstborn males from all the tribes. But what happened was that after the Israelites worshipped the golden calf, and the only tribe that refused to engage in that was the tribe of Levi, the tribe of Levi was selected to replace the firstborn and to do this. So that was Plan B, because they had shown themselves so absolutely committed and devoted to not being involved in idolatry. Some things to think about. Okay. So Moshe v'Aaron v'anav, Moses, Aaron, and his children, families ultimately, I believe. Usmuchim lahem, and right next to them, if we look at the arrangement of the camp, we would realize that on this east side, Degel Machane Yehuda was the standard of the tribe of Judah. And of course, there were two other tribes alongside Judah, and we'll see this, Rashi's going to tell us. Vachonim alav, and encamped with the tribe of Judah, alongside with the tribe of Judah, Yisachar uZvulun, the tribes of Yisachar and Zvulun. And the general comment, Tov LaTzadik, it's good for the righteous person, Tov L'Shcheno, and it's good for his neighbor, for the neighbor of the righteous person. Remember, we had the example of that it was bad for the wicked person and bad for his neighbor. Okay, and here we have good for the righteous and good for the one who lives next door, who is neighbor, who's associating with the righteous person.
When you referenced a different quote where
right.
You're doing the opposite. Where was that?
Correct. That was right above. Let's take a look where it was. Yep. Here, right here in 29, and it says Oy la rasha, Oy la rasha, Oy l'shcheno. Woe to the wicked one, woe to his neighbor. Right in there, verse 29. And that is because next to the tribe of Kahat they were on the south side, and they were next to the standard of Reuven. So, and remember with Kahat, from Kahat, we have Korach. He was one of the descendants. And of course, alongside Korach, we had Datan and Aviram from the tribe of Reuven. So that's what happened there, which we're going to come to eventually. So, We have just the opposite here. Okay, let's keep going. And so Rashi wants to prove this. How do we know that Zebulun and Issachar were blessed and it was good for them? Okay, and here he goes. Lefi, the reason why, Lefi, because Sha'ayu Shcheinav Shel Moshe, because they were neighbors of Moses, Sha'aya Osek B'Torah, who would constantly occupy himself in Torah, Ne'esu Gedolim B'Torah, and they also became great in the Torah. Shene'emar, as it states, again, we're drilling down to the proof of this, Psalm 60, Yehuda, Mechokaki or Mechokai, Judah is my my lawmakers. Right? And then in Chronicles, I'm going to ask you to mute, please, if you will. And Divrei Hamim, that's the book of Chronicles, first book of Chronicles, Aleph, Yud Bet, chapter 12. Umi b'nei Yisachar, and from the descendants of Yisachar, Yod E Binah, men of understanding, etc. Okay, it also talks about how they were also astronomers. They knew how to figure out the calendar, and they used to set the times for the festivals. But the point is that they were learned people. Matayim Rashi Sanhedraot, 200 heads of Sanhedrin, of the courts, right? How about Zvulun? Zvulun, Moshchim Beshevet, back in the book of Judges, chapter 5. Moshchin, they drew Beshevet. Literally, it means rod, but you'll see that it's a metaphor. Sofer, the rod of the scribe. What is the rod of the scribe? The pen, right? So they were scribes. There's also another attribute to Zebulun, and that is that they were traders. It talks about that as well, and that they used their money to pay for the work of the scholars. And to this day, they talk about an Issachar Zevulun arrangement, where you have people who contribute funds to make it possible for research in Torah and scholarship to take place. And of course, such the benefit and the merit of the scholars also is shared then directly with the people who make it possible for them to study. So this is all based on this location, right? The location of Zebulun and Issachar and Judah next to Moses and Aaron. Going on. Kol Pekudei HaLeviim, the entire numbers, right? The entire accounts of the Levites, Asher Pakad Moshe va'Aaron, which Moses and Aaron counted. And we are going to comment. This is Nakud al va'Aaron. So in the actual Torah scroll itself, you will see these dots on top of the word va'Aaron, and they are actually a type of interpretation. They're telling us that we need to understand this, not to take this literally. Al pi Hashem, at the mouth of God, in other words, at God's command, lemishpachotam, according to their families, kol zachar mi ben chodesh v'mala, every male from a month and older, shnayim v'esrim elef, 22,000. So we are actually going to see why the Levites were counted from, at this particular counting, were counted from 1 month and older, and we will see the connection then that I shared with you at the beginning of this lesson with the firstborn, how closely interconnected they are, and how the Levites were replacing the firstborn. So we will see. So I started to write down numbers, but let's take a look. Asher Pakad Moshe va'Aaron, right? Which Moses and Aaron counted. And he says right away, Rashi says to us, Nakud al va'Aaron. There are dots on the top of the word va'Aaron. Lomar, and this is what the tradition teaches, Shelo haya b'minyan haleviim, that Aaron, was not counted amongst the number that was counted of the Levites. Interesting, because of course Aaron was in fact a chief Levite. Now Moses wasn't even though he was from the tribe of Levi, he only functioned as a priest when he did the induction of Aaron and his sons into the priesthood. Beyond that, he did not function as a priest. He was sometimes referred to as the Melech, as the king, because he had to handle those other elements of running the community. So it says, Shnaim ve'esrim elef. So we have a number here to 22,000, 22,000. So let me put this up here. Let's see if I can put it up. There we are. Right, the tally is 22,000. Got that number there. Ubit pratan, however, when you actually do the addition, atam motze shalosh me'ot yeterim, okay? So one finds that there are actually 300 extra. So I was about to start to write down here the actual numbers. Okay, so we've got the family of Gershon. There were 7,500 of the males 1 month and older that were counted there. Let's go, and we've got one more family here, and then we'll do the addition. Okay, so we've got, I'll just read it through with you, right? All right. Bnei Gershon, the children of Gershon, Shivat Alafim, 7,500 and 7,500. I have it written up here. You can see it, right? Bnei Kahat, the children of Kahat, Shmonat Alafim v'Shesh Ma'ot, we've got 8,600. And now we've got Merari, Bnei Merari, Sheshet Alafim Umatayim, so that would be 6,200. And let's do the tally, right? So 5 and 6 make 11, 11 and 2, so over here, well, it isn't going to go backwards. I don't know if I can make it go backwards, but so we obviously right over here we have 13. 1 and 7 make 8, 16 and 22. So we have here. Try this again. 22. Well, look at that, right? How come when you actually add up these children, you get a total of 22,300, and yet it tells you, the Torah tells you 22,000, right? Is the Torah a bad arithmetician? Okay, and the answer is not. But look at this. It's not necessary. Here it isn't stated explicitly. Okay, later on it will be told. But what happened? So Rashi's going to explain this. V'lama lo klalan im hasha'ar. Why didn't we include these 300 with the rest of the Levites, whatever 300 we're talking about? Vayifdu et habachorot. So now I have to do some explaining so that they could redeem the firstborn. So again, now notice immediately the connection between Levites and firstborn males. So later on, very, very soon, we're going to be told that Moses had to count the number of firstborn males amongst the rest of the tribes. And what happened was there were more firstborn males than the Levites. And the idea was that every Levite would act as a redemption for the firstborn male. But there were more firstborn males than Israelites. And the question now is, because we could only take the 22,000 and reference it against the firstborn Israelites, okay? And Rashi is saying, wait a second, there were 22,300. Why not add those 300 and redeem 22,300 firstborn Israelites? And remember, the time for the redemption of the firstborn is at 30 days, is at 1 month. So you can see how beautifully it's connected. So that we're still left with this question. All right. V'lo yihu zukukim hashlosha v'shiv'im umatayim bechorot. And so it wouldn't be necessary now for the 273. There were additionally 273 firstborn Israelites, ha'odfin al haminyan, which went above, right, which exceeded the 22,000, all right, the fidyon, that they wouldn't need to be redeemed themselves. Amru Rabotenu b'Masechet Bechorot. So I'm going to, so let me explain. I'll explain this little piece here. What do we mean, right? Because there were 22,273, right, firstborn males in amongst the Israelites. So we had this 273 firstborn males that needed to be redeemed. And what they did was they had to pay 5 shkalim. They paid 5 shekels of silver in order to be redeemed. And Rashi saying, but we actually had more than enough for the Levites of a month and older that could have redeemed them, and they wouldn't have had to pay the 5 shkalim, right? So, Amru Rabotenu, our sages said, b'Masechet Bechorot, in the tractate Bechorot that deals with the firstborn on page 5. Otan shlosh ma'ot leviim, those extra 300 Levites, bechorim hayu, they themselves were firstborn. They themselves were firstborn. The dayan, and it was sufficient, sheyif yafkiu atzman min hapidyon, that they should be able to release themselves from being redeemed. And that's the answer between this discrepancy of 22,000 and 22,300 when you add it up. And in sort of reflecting on this, it goes to show you how the Torah has secrets, you might say, that are embedded in it that require very careful analysis, careful and patient figuring out to see what's there within these texts. So, going on. So here we're going to be told what's going on here, right? Vayom, yes, David.
So, okay, I understand the math, and I'll say I kind of understand the explanation around all the math, but I mean, what's the significance at the end of the day? I mean, why go through to create that secret, and the difference of 300, and what does it tell us? That I don't understand. Maybe it doesn't tell us anything, but it just feels like there should be something more than, yeah. Anyway, that's my question.
So I'm not entirely sure that I understand the question.
So
tell me,
clarify.
It didn't make a whole lot of sense from my point of view either.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
what,
I guess.
Yeah.
Why?
Why?
Well,
yeah.
What I was. Why? Okay, so what I was asking was, yes, I understand the fact that you can count them as the firstborn, and therefore that's why the extra 300, is not part of the equation. But I guess, what is the point of all that? Why? What does that tell us? Going through all these numbers and getting to that secret that you've described. What's the significance of that secret other than, this is how it's accounted for in the Torah? Maybe there is none, but that's my question. Is there any significance associated with that in terms of some sort of, guidance that we should get, or some sort of moral that we learn, or whatever? That's what I'm asking. Is there something bigger around that? It's a lot of detail, and then there doesn't seem like there's a punchline. That's what I'm getting at.
I just want to clarify. Is your question as to why is the Torah not saying that specifically? Or are you asking?
No.
Okay, so let's keep going. But please reserve the question. And if you still feel that you're left with that question, may not be today, but hopefully we'll pick this up on Thursday and we will deal with it. Okay?
Okay, but you understand my question now, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I'm not saying I'm certain, But the issue
Okay.
that I wanted to know was, are you asking the question as to why the Torah has these kinds of secrets? And you're saying, no, that's not
No.
your question is, what's the importance of the fact that the 300 that or rather that the 300 Levites were firstborn and could not redeem the Israelite firstborn? Is that the question then? What's
Yeah,
the
and more yeah, and more or less, what's the significance of the secret, right? It's not why does the Torah have the secret, but what is the significance that this secret represents?
okay.
So, or
Then
it, yeah.
go ahead. So as I said, I'm still not sure that I'm certain of it. Certainly one thing that jumps out at me is you know, and this is a very simple, I don't claim this is anything particularly deep, okay? But it's important because sometimes there are things that are not necessarily deep, but we still don't pay attention to them, right? Which is, if you've got your own act to clean up, you're not in a place to clean up other people's acts. Okay. In other words, those firstborn Levites had to take care of their own redemption, and they were therefore not in a position to redeem other Israelites. Okay. I mean, that's at least
Okay.
that jumps out at me right there. All right. And I guess another element would be just that even the very attention to detail, all right, that in some ways, and again, not to say that this is particularly insightful or anything, but you know, we've talked about appreciation, right? We've talked about how appreciation is so fundamental in finding joy in life, in being a happy person, that when you learn how to be appreciative, you learn a secret of not being depressed. Just as the secret of depression, if you want to be depressed, have unrealistic expectations, or have an attitude of, what have you done for me lately? Or have an attitude of entitlement. These are all negative ways of appreciation. They move you away from appreciation. On the other hand, attention to detail often is a secret to developing appreciation. In other words, in seeing what actually goes into something that we take for granted pushes you away from taking for granted, right? And fills you with wonder and appreciation. And so for one of the best examples I ever read had to do with a cup of coffee. That here we are, we go, you know, go to the coffee, get the coffee maker, throw the coffee in, and you know, we go to this great trouble of filling up the carafe with water, filling the coffee maker with water, and getting the filter, etc., etc. Okay, all right, fine. But think about it. To get that cup of coffee, you had to have a farmer somewhere, who knows, Africa, South America, wherever, to grow the coffee, to have to go and arrange to tend those plants so that they would be able to produce, to take care. And if anybody's ever done any gardening, you know that there are worms, there are plant diseases, there are all kinds of things that you have to attend to have a successful harvest. And then he has to arrange to have the coffee beans picked. He has to arrange to transport those coffee beans to a place where either they're going to be put in bags. Somebody had to design the bags and make sure that they were available. That when you actually start to break things down into the detail, right? Because then they have to be assembled. They possibly need transportation, then additional transportation, and it depends. And then they have to be roasted. And in order to be roasted, they have to have roasting machines. They have to have people who are going to arrange it. They have to have places where these roasting machines are set up, etc., etc. And then the coffee is possibly ground. And if it isn't ground, it certainly is put into bags. Somebody needs to have made those bags, designed those bags, etc., etc., etc. You would find that there may be, if we were to break it down, right, in order for that bag of coffee to wind up on your supermarket shelf, where you simply have to go and get it and pay for it, and then you can make your coffee. And when you think about all the people, this is just a cup of coffee, okay? Look at all the other things that happen in our day, that happen in a routine kind of way that we never think about, right? Whether it's the roads we travel on, whether it's the buildings that we live in, whether it's the cars that we drive, whether it's the clothing we wear. I mean, there are literally millions of people around the world, okay, that are involved in our simply everyday activities. And until you're
So it
willing,
comes,
yeah, go ahead. It's fine.
no. So it comes back. So that I think that's one of your favorite sayings, right? Is we are so dependent on others, right?
Yeah.
It's basically our lives are built on the lives of others, right? You've said that before, right? So it's also coming back to that. Is that
Yes.
am I getting the right point?
I believe, certainly it's one of them. I mean, I guess the point
Okay.
I was trying to make is that only if you take the time to think this through, because I didn't put you through, a doctoral dissertation here, okay? You didn't need to be a rocket scientist to figure out
Yeah.
these particular things, all right? Um, you know, uh, you learn to realize what you have to be thankful for, because throw a curveball into any one of these particular things, and they're so interdependent that there is so much for us to see is actual blessing and to be grateful for. And that's why perhaps saying a bracha before you have that cup of coffee, to thank God for giving something that you are now going to consume and benefit from, is a very fundamental spiritual act. And
Yep.
maybe I'm pushing this too far, but again, if you're almost in any subject, right? The deeper you understand that subject, in some ways, and I think Maimonides makes this point, right? That in some ways a scientist should be one of the most believing people in the world, and perhaps one of the happiest people in the world, to be able to discover these amazing elements that go into it. This morning I was just pondering a little bit about electricity, and how the whole physical phenomenon of electromagnetism, and how dependent we are on electricity now, and how, I don't understand the physics of electromagnetism, and how only certain elements are able to conduct electricity. And I realize there's been analysis as to, why metals are able to conduct electricity, whereas other elements are not able to conduct electricity. And of course, you have to go very deeply down, I think, into atomic theory, possibly, but the whole concept of electricity, maybe physicists understand the concept of electricity and how electricity is generated by electromagnetism. And I was pondering to myself, the electric generators, do they have magnets? David, I assume you might know these sorts of things. Are they great?
Yeah, they do. Well,
Yeah.
some of them do, some of them don't. If you take conduction, like when you convert water to electricity, like hydroelectricity, that's basically taking a wheel, and then it's a turbine. So you don't necessarily, but but a motor, of course, does have magnets associated with it. But anyway.
And then, of course, you've got solar power. How amazing is that?
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, right? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, please.
Well, there are all kinds of power and all kinds of things other than metal that conduct electricity. Sometimes it's going through air, water, fingers, carpet. There's all kinds of electricity conducted by all kinds of matter.
Or generated in other kinds of ways. Right. There's chemical
And
elements.
as far as the coffee too, so I know there's not to go into the fact that there's fair trade or exploitative, but it's kind of a symbiotic relationship, and it's based on our hopefully earning money to pay for that. But when we're earning money to pay for it, we're not necessarily thinking about things in the same way as when we're trading something that we've done or something that we're doing, and we're trading something that we grew for something that someone else grew. and we might appreciate that more, but nonetheless we're offering money and hopefully providing people with a means of making a living. So it's not just a one-way channel. It's hopefully somewhat of a symbiotic relationship. Now, when you're doing there are parasitic relationships involving capitalistic trade, but one can certainly use fair trade and help people more make a living, and it's so they also might have some gratitude for the fact that there is a group of people who are willing to pay them for what they're doing and growing and things like that.
Absolutely. Gratitude is not a one-sided kind of thing. Right. I agree. And I love what you said and how it works. And of course, I think initially was it all barter to begin with? And the whole concept of using something like money to use as a medium by which one can affect this. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I don't know if this is all about economics, if economics is the subject that deals with this and gets into the details of the complexity of it, etc. At any rate, we're going to end the lesson with this today, and got some exciting stuff coming up on Thursday. So I'm going to stop.
But all I know is it seems like if we just had the 22,300,
yes,
we wouldn't have we would not have the description of the Pidyon Haben in the later paragraphs.
We would have to find another thing. I mean, clearly they'd
have to find another way to generate those funds. So
if I'm understanding you correctly, the idea of being 5 shkalim, okay, there's some other basis for why the redemption happens to be 5 shkalim, that exact amount. And right now I can't think of it.
And I'm sure we'll find out later, but yeah.
Possibly.
But that's what I'm saying. I mean, we wouldn't have a reason to have that particular paragraph to describe that if they just went straight with the 300 and say, isn't that amazing that there's just enough Levites to take care of everybody else in the so.
Well, this was only for the okay, but but Golda, I believe that this was only for the first time around. In other words, it was when the Levites got instituted. The whole idea nowadays of the redemption of the firstborn, while there's a relationship to that, it's no longer connected.
Correct.
So yeah, so I don't know.
It just lets the Levites out of it.
That's right. No, those 5 shkalim go to the priest, and is actually a mitzvah mentioned elsewhere. Okay, let's stop the recording.